I'm Professor of Modern History here at Edinburgh. I teach the full range of students, from first year undergraduate to third and fourth year undergraduate, to masters, both taught and research, and naturally I supervise PhDs. My research interests, which feed into all of my teaching interests, mainly revolve around genocide. I have written and researched extensively on the Armenian genocide and the Holocaust, and a number of other cases of genocide besides. We are certainly likely to see more genocides. That's as close as one can get to a historical given. What it seems to me that the scholar of genocide can do is to try to get us out of some of the boxes in which we're thinking at the moment. It seems to me that our politicians, and many of our intellectuals too, are very indentured to what you might call a Nazi paradigm of genocide. They see genocide as the preserve of hyper-powerful totalitarian states with big ideologies, working with big pre-programmed ideas and annihilating minorities in a very systematic way. That's of course a very important paradigm, but in the modern world I suspect, or the coming world, I suspect we'll see a very different paradigm emerging, and one can already see this emerging in states like the Democratic Republic of Congo, in which over the last 15 years or so we've seen a conflict which is the bloodiest since the Second World War. But we don't have one side murdering the other in some en bloc fashion, so much as a whole group of warring parties and massive attrition against different population groups. What we should really be doing these days is trying to get away from some old totalitarian paradigms of genocide and think more about kind of postmodern forms of genocide, if you like. Genocide in places where the state no longer has the monopoly of authority and control. The terrible thing about genocide is that it can be perpetrated under all sorts of circumstances, by strong states, by weak states, in situations where there is no state. And the genocide scholar, I think, needs to be aware of all of those possibilities. As a teacher here at Edinburgh, it seems to me that we do have a particular responsibility in shaping the minds of our students, because, at one fairly obvious level, this has been a university which, as you know, has over the last few generations produced a lot of very significant figures in world politics. Some of the first generation of post-colonial leaders in Africa were, for instance, educated in Edinburgh. So there's at that level a very, very definite sort of political impact and to what we do and how we teach our students here. So that's something that really is very particular to Edinburgh in terms of our position in Britain and in the world at large. That said, I wouldn't primarily focus upon our significance in terms of educating specific people, specific parts of specific elites. In a sense, that seems almost too elitist an understanding of what we as a university should be thinking about doing. What we primarily provide, and this is where history is an absolutely central discipline in my view, is a broad humanistic education, an attempt to get people as citizens thinking about the sorts of countries in which they live, the sorts of things their countries do in the world, the power systems, the economic systems, how they might themselves relate to that, their own responsibilities in that system, how they might be reflective on the world in which they live and in turn shape it, not just at the high political levels, if they're lucky enough or unlucky enough to occupy those, but on the simple level of citizenship. History seems to me a central element to that sort of humanistic education. Historians are certainly solitary beings, they tend to work on their own, but that notwithstanding, I've been fortunate to be beneficiary of a very large number of international contacts, international networks. A few years ago I was invited to be senior scholar in residence at the Holocaust Museum in Washington DC, the US Holocaust Memorial Museum, and had a wonderful year there researching the book I was writing at the time. I'm also involved with the University of Michigan, a great network of Armenian and Turkish scholars there, working on the Armenian genocide of 1915. International contacts come easy here, and that's one of the great things about it. Scholars want to come here to visit, people want to come here to conferences, and people are very happy to invite people from Edinburgh to attend conferences overseas, so it's a great place to work in that respect. Working at Edinburgh and having so many connections overseas, particularly particularly in the United States. It's very interesting to see how we're received over there. There's certainly a kind of British factor which is always present when one's working in America or at conferences over there. I don't know if it's a certain kind of old world charm, but of course Edinburgh and the Scottish system was very important in lending its educational structure to the American university system. So there's an element of that too. One wouldn't want to overplay it, but it's certainly no disadvantage to hail from these shores.
This production is copyright the University of Edinburgh.